AoLion has been relatively quiet since the Q10, but recently I stumbled across the N20 controller, which stands out with its design. Is this all it has to offer, or is there more to it? Well, let me tell you. The first thing I noticed when I took it out of the box was that it is very much inspired by a Pro controller. This is especially noticeable when you look at the top with the bumper and triggers. Despite that, it is 20 grams lighter than a Pro controller. The next is of course the big design choice for this controller, these clear plastic elements. I'm honestly not the biggest fan. Not only do I not like how it feels, but also how it looks. It's really just a plastic on top of a black plastic. You don't even see the interior. Also in a normal light, it looks nice and clear. That is until you get your greasy fingers all over it. But when I get the reflection of a monitor in it, I can actually see what looks like stress patterns. And there you can see that it clearly radiates out from the button cutouts, which makes it look just even weirder. Also, while I am on the plastic, for me the left handle has one corner that is not fully attached, which wouldn't be too bad if it wasn't for the plastic being somewhat sharp. Then the last thing that stood out was the design of the sticks. For two reasons that is. First, the pattern itself is not something I have seen before, and while it works fine, it does sometimes feel a bit strange, almost like the rubber has been cut. Then the second thing is quite minor, but just a bit strange to me. All the advertisement shows the long strips on the design being vertical and the little triangles being horizontal, but the controller and the box shows it in the opposite directions. Now as for what is advertised for the N20, you get RGB lights, 2 D-pad styles, Hall effect joysticks, 1000Hz polling rate, 2 macro buttons, an ABXY switch, round to square gate switch, 6-axis gyro, wired, Bluetooth and 2.4 GHz connection for PC, Switch and phones, and a 600 mAh battery. As for what you get in the box, you of course get the controller itself, the D-pad, a USB-A to C cable, and a manual. Also, you can buy a bundle with a dongle included, but this one did not come inside of the box, but it was just kind of tucked into the bubble wrap that the controller box came in. But it is labeled with something, not this controller though. Then moving on to how the hardware actually performs. For the actuation force, we get 70 grams for A and B, 75 grams for X and 80 grams for Y. For D-pad up, we get 205 grams, for D-pad down, 245 grams, and for left and right, 220 grams. Start and select come in at 95 grams, and L3 at 775, and R3 at 720 grams. This is honestly surprisingly light for ABXY, and it kinda worries me for how long the rubber will last, when it's already this soft. Then I get to the circularity error rate, which is where I just encountered some strangeness. First, for joystick tester, it seems to be stuck in the topmost position, so I couldn't use that one for testing the error rate. Then when I tested on hardware tester, I saw that the controller was already in square gate mode, with a circularity error rate of 11.1%. But when I tried to switch the gate, it became slightly more square with a rate of 18.8%. This is quite far off from the manual's claim of an average of 0.1% for round and 9.5% for square. This is however only true for the dongle and the Bluetooth connection. When using the wired connection, you get about 0.5 for round and 9.5 to 10.5 for square. This is baffling to me that the type of connection would dictate how the stick works. But in a way, it is reflecting the polling rate. As for the dongle, it comes in at around 125 Hz, and Bluetooth comes in at around 250 Hz. When wired, however, you get the advertised 1000 Hz. All in all, it feels a bit like they focus on the wired mode, so that the advertising looks good, but thrown wireless use to the roadside. Before I even get into how the controller feels for gaming, I have to mention that it has no memory whatsoever. meaning you have to switch BAYX to ABXY every time the controller turns off. It's just something I noticed a lot while using it, as it is a Switch controller first. But then I get to actually using it. At first it feels fine and is not much worse than a Pro controller. But slowly I did notice the low polling rate, where it would feel like I pressed the button only for it to be ever so slightly delayed when pairing in Dark Souls, for example. In the same vein, I also noticed the aggressively stuck square gates to a frustrating degree at times, where I wondered why the character feels so stiff to turn. I then get to the D-pad. As I mentioned earlier, you do get two styles, which can be interchanged quite simply by pulling one off and sticking the new one in. I don't hate that and like the choice. Me personally though, I stuck with the regular D-pad. Also on a side note, I think this is the reason why the controller uses switches instead of membranes for the D-pad. And while I appreciate mechanical buttons, it does not help with the contra test. Seeing how the shield style D-pad is the regular one, I wasn't surprised, but at the same time I expected more from actual switches. On the other hand, something I was very positive about on the N20 was the macro function, which not only boasts a solid 32 steps on both buttons, but is almost perfectly in sync. You don't see it on the footage, but the macro was only one frame off at the beginning. After that though, it was pretty much perfect. When it comes to the gyro, there are actually two modes that you can use. When you connect it to the Switch, you can make use of the native implementation. From my testing, it works pretty well and doesn't seem to desync that much. So all in all, it's good on that front. Another thing you can do, however, is hold a button combination to put it into stick emulation mode. This seems interesting at first, but when I tested it out, it didn't really feel good to use. This is because it tries to center the stick as fast as possible, which is why it feels laggy and not very precise. I can honestly not recommend this implementation, as it will cause more frustration than anything else. In conclusion, the AoLion N20 is not worth your money. While you might like how it looks, it's essentially a wired controller with the bare minimum wireless functionality, with a lot of downsides. And in a market that is just flooded with so many better controllers, I'm actually surprised that they even brought this one out. If you want to find a better controller, you can see some of the other reviews I did for them. And with that being said, if you don't want to miss out on future reviews or random videos and live streams, then don't forget to like, hype and subscribe.